welcome Mr. Khizr Kahn to speak with us, and I will simply rely on Diane's earlier introduction as our introduction this evening, and we welcome you as a genuine ambassador of Peacebuilding.
Thank you. Peace be upon you. I don't know what else to say after all this wonderful lesson that we have received. I'm a lay person, so you have to forgive me. I don't deserve to be standing in front of scholars and these learned audience as well. I was thinking, what would I say when these scholars are in the audience? Only one thing came to mind, that I'll narrate my experience throughout the country on interfaith, and the hope that their work has given us, and I am witness coast to coast in all communities within the United States, how hopeful communities are because of the interfaith work, because of leaders of the faith coming together. Professor Nimr just mentioned involvement of policymakers in peace building. Believe me, that is the status of interfaith and religious leaders and our policymakers, their involvement in the efforts of building peace in the United States. There had not been a single event where congressional leaders have not participated with Muslims lately. That was not the case before. Portland, Oregon to Houston, Florida, New York, literally every event was attended. These are organized by Muslim leaders, and they tell me that it was very rare that one political leader would attend. That had not been the case. I cite the example of Portland, Oregon. Senator Wyden came with the entire congressional delegation. With him came all of the local judges. With that group came U.S. Attorney's Office and their team. With them came District Attorney and their entire team of prosecutors and public defenders. And in the audience, among the Muslims, were sitting all local faith leaders, not only Christians, but our Jewish friends, our Buddhist friends. It was amazing to see, and these are the remarks of the Muslim leaders, that it has not happened before. We are amazed that this show of support by all faiths and all leaders is amazing. Same thing in Houston, same thing in Toledo, same thing in Cleveland. The reason I give this example, that what these faith leaders have taught us is taking effect. It is not being wasted. All communities are beneficiaries of what you have taught us, that in difficult times, faith holds hands with each other and move us forward. Come September 9th, we all will be looking for healing. We all will be looking for moving forward. We all will be standing in support of one another. And what a wonderful lesson we got from Professor Nimr on forgiveness. And that is part of my topic that I speak whenever I am invited to a community, especially to Muslim community. I gave them example of following the example of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When he moved from Makkah to Medina, because of the difficulties in Makkah and the tribal culture that existed in Medina at that time, he drafted a document. We speak about the values and the constitution and laws of Islam from Quran and Hadith and other jurisprudence, but we seldom talk about the covenant of Medina. And I implore all Muslims to read it yet one more time, and I implore all faith leaders and people of faith to read it. Covenant of Medina, in today's political terminology, you may call it Constitution of Medina, where relationship between faiths were listed, equal protection for all faiths. If you read that document, you will come out with a clear conclusion that that document, written 1400 years ago, under the tribal circumstances and tribal cultures, where forgiveness was not heard of, was never practiced, but their Prophet, peace be upon him, wrote a document, gave this mankind the very first written interfaith, interreligious, multi-language, multicultural language where everybody had equal rights and protection, freedom, and to practice their religion. So I implore Muslims to read their history and learn from it, move forward, and for all of us as Americans, I remind you the words of Professor Abu-Nimer that forgiveness is going to be curing us after this divisive election, after this difficult time that we have had up until now. It will be over soon, regardless of who wins. This nation will stand tall, will remain leader of the world, and forgiveness is the very first step towards reconciliation. You can start with forgiveness and you can conquer the world all over again. There is so much hope. This nation is built on pluralism, equal dignity, equal protection. I end my remarks by citing an example. I am so honored and so touched, and we have become testament to the goodness of this country, goodness that our faith leaders have built in this country. Since our difficult times started after the convention, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of letters and cards sent to us, all of them good, wishing us well. We have a stack of Bibles that have been sent to us by various faiths, highlighted portions, pointed to us. Please read. These words will strengthen you. These words will help you go through difficult time and all. And we have read them, a stack of them sitting on the side of the table. From our Jewish brothers and sisters, we have received the ornament of mezuzah, not one, 6 of them, asking us to place them so you will be protected. We have received from our Buddhist friends prayers, scripture, documents, other faiths. What I'm narrating is that our faiths make us hold each other's hand and move us forward. They did not send to us by saying, oh, you are Muslims, therefore we are sending this. Not at all. They considered us one of them, one of their fellow human beings. What an honor I received. On the 15th of December of this year, there is 225th anniversary being celebrated of Bill of Rights of United States that we so cherish. Each one of us lives under those Bill of Rights. It's being celebrated in National Archives. There are going to be our legislative leaders, administration leaders, probably president as well, congressional leaders. And guess who is asked to preside? A Muslim American. That is the status. That is the status of the goodness of this country. They did not ask what your religion is, what your faith is. They saw some good and they invited this person. Therefore, and it doesn't happen. This is the work of these faith leaders that sit among us. It is their efforts, it's their work that have taught this nation that faith hold hands in difficult times. So, God bless you. Thank you for allowing me to stand before you undeservingly. I am a lay person. If I have said something that is inappropriate to this elegant gathering, forgive me for that. And I leave you with prayers. God bless you. Thank you very much.
We will have opportunity for questions and conversation, and do want to remind you that there will be a time for reception following and to continue conversation with one another. At this time, I would like to invite questions. Please do keep them brief so that we have opportunities for a number of people to participate. Questions that you would like to address to Dr. Abu-Nimer or Mr. Khizr Kahn, or to both. So I invite those to come to us now. Yes, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Schenker. I'm on the Board of Trustees here. I'm also the University Chaplain here at AU. I was impressed, Dr. Abu-Nimer, to hear you say that Christians are perceived as having a monopoly on forgiveness, since we're not using it that much. But I have encountered in my own career a lot of resistance, even among Christians, to the idea of forgiveness because it's perceived as weakness. It's perceived as rolling over. Given that forgiveness started out as an economic term, it was the pardoning of a debt by the person who clearly had the more power. How does casting forgiveness as an act of power rather than act of weakness factor into the work you're doing?
And this is one of the, in the research of education, I should say also that I am a co-researcher with this. My co-researcher is my partner wife, Ilham Nasser. She's a professor at the George Mason. And her research is on intentionality. So we integrated the concept of intentionality, basically trying to see when the act of forgiveness is done intentionally and why it is done, the reasoning behind it. And one of the main challenges that we found in the qualitative data among teachers of why we will not forgive in the case, any specific case, was the notion I will be perceived as weak. And if I forgive, the next time they will come and do the act against me again. But again, I don't think that's American. That's in general. Maybe one can generalize on this one. Say it's in nature of a human to be seeking trust that the act of the crime will not be repeated. But the notion also that it is a Christian, it's a stereotype that many people have used, particularly when you put the dichotomy that Islam is about justice, Christianity is about forgiveness and mercy. And these are dichotomies, and I think ways that is not accurate to present both faith in this simple categorization. The way we dealt with the weakness is that, again, in the manual, we brought in a number of ways of empowerment. Is to clarify that forgiving is actually is a healing act, and economically, and spiritually, and psychologically, you will feel better and you will gain by the act of forgiveness rather than continue to holding the grudge or hold the need to do that act of revenge. But it's not easy. These are, I think, in many ways, we ended up with the notion that it is an inner process that the teacher has to go through it before they're capable of teaching it. Otherwise, if they teach it without the inner process, it will end up like any other class that they teach, and the kids know that they are not serious. And they really don't believe it. So that's where we went with it in terms of.
Yes.
My name is Iman. I'm the second Imam in America, a woman Imam. And I run the youth organization. I believe in prevention other than treatment. So I work with these youth, and maybe the afu, or start with the bullying, and you go and teach the kids how to stop the bullying and not to be part of it. Your work outside, I work with women, and we find that women very, very useful in such a job. So I was happy to see this picture. There's some women, but all the pictures from before, I found only men that work in. So my question, have you trained and did you think of putting women out? I guess they have the ability to work in such a project.
It's an honor to meet you as second Imam. And I am sure you are doing a pioneer work in that area, and God give you the strength to present it in and out. By default, when you speak of working with religious leaders, you end up with male, older men, older men, and are clergy. Tomorrow morning, inshallah, if I arrive safely to Jordan, I am moderating a panel of 7 men. On Thursday in the Vatican, I'm moderating of another panel of 7 men. For the Vatican, I managed to sneak in a woman. And they said, but she's not a clergy, she's not a mufti. I have 3 muftis and 2 patriarchs and 1 priest. And I managed to get in the woman in the panel in some creative way. In Jordan, Tuesday morning, I could not, because the requirement was we need to bring somebody from Dar al-Ifta, from Mufti offices, and also from the Ministry of Endowment, Religious Endowment, from the 6th region, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Egypt. So by default, unfortunately, when you work with a religious leader, with leadership, that's the area. It's mostly like politicians. When you work with, in many ways, the president and prime minister, the chances of finding women is higher maybe these days, but also it's very difficult in certain regions. When you go down to the level of middle work, community leaders, when you frame that question differently, the picture exactly the opposite. The majority of the audience, the majority of the workers are women in the interfaith group, and women in the intrafaith group, and women who are leading the community-based work. So on that level, we have no sort of difficulty. But I think we need to be more creative in doing that. When we ask for exemplar of forgiveness, we found more women than men, motivated by their faith. But there are some ways, but that's the reality. And the reality is in all of the agencies, not only Muslim. I don't want to tell you about the Greek Orthodox or the Catholic or the Protestant even. Difficulty of telling them, give me somebody from the patriarch or from the bishop office who is a female. And that's usually a challenge. But I'm looking at you, maybe.
Let's see. Yes. Rich, I believe. Yes, you were earlier.
I'll turn sideways. Dr. Abu-Nimer, thank you for the practicality. But I have a theological, ethical, terminological question. Afu, you had other words that signified forgiveness, also suffer.
Safh, yes.
Suffer. But you quoted in this essay some years ago someone named Fahmi Hawaidi, who says God has clothed every human being with dignity like a blanket, but if he commits a crime, with his own hands, such a protection blanket he removes, by committing a crime that removes part of his humanity.
And I'm not agreeing with that.
Well, you argued so, yes.
Thank you.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Tell me. It's here. It's
Yeah,
here.
I know that.
You
I know that. I know comment with that.
So maybe you're against that. Can you lose the dignity by committing any humane act?
No, because I started with the quote that God's mercy is bigger than any sin. If you recall, that's where I stand on the issue today. Fahmi Hawaidi is Egyptian scholar and journalist who writes about Islam, pluralism, peace, and just war theory. And the quote there should be, if I can recall, I think it's 2007,
2006, yes.
2006 or 7 article, is to illustrate the just war theory group rather than the non-violence and the peace groups. In theological stance today in Islam, I at least categorically put them in the three. Those who say we have to go on the offense, theologically and practically, in order to bring the message of Islam. And those who said, no, we should be very careful about using violence, and we should use violence or aggression under certain circumstances. Fahmi Hawaidi is one of those, I would say, who belong to the group that I think were more careful in the application for the use of violence, and that's where I sort of called it. But I myself continue to support the notion that we all as a human have our dignity, and that's the most sacred thing that we should protect. And you do not lose your dignity for any sin that you commit, because of God's mercy, again, greater than any of that. The difficulty with the third group that I argue or support is that we are a very small group yet to be institutionalized. We don't have an institution in the Islamic world today, whether it is in a ministry or in a Dar Iftah or in a big institution that came publicly to support the notion of non-violence resistance, non-violence in general, because of the sensitivity of it being perceived as pacifism, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Christian faith, when also went through that for many centuries in order to finally articulate small group in Christianity who are institutionally in support of absolute non-violence application. And that's where I am with that aspect. But it's wonderful that somebody actually remember what I have done. I really appreciate that.
Margaret Benefield from the Shelling Institute. I'm interested in, you said that the teachers who've done their own inner work and can forgive are the ones who can teach it because it's authentic. What percentage would you say have done their own inner work, and how can they be helped to do that work when they have not?
So, right, thank you for that question. Right now we're doing a pre and post research with the University of Michigan on this precise question of, we are introducing the curriculum with 300 kids with their teachers. We train the teachers, and then we want to see if those teachers who were trained in this methodology of forgiveness, when they teach, they are more effective in persuading the kids, reducing the number of bullying, the number of violent incidents. So we're dealing with that. But what we found out, about 15 to 20% of the teachers that we interviewed and worked with have done inner work and reflection on that. And we've identified 3 core competencies to enhance the teacher's capacity to be a forgiving teacher and as individual. And we did not invent them. These are in the literature of forgiveness as well. And that's a critical thinking, to acquire skills of critical thinking. Second, to acquire skills of emotional intelligence. Is not to be afraid to cry and to deal with hard emotions and to deal with the emotions. And that is a skill, to be emotionally intelligent. And the third one is the notion of be comfortable with facilitation and dialogue. The process of dialogue is crucial to open the space for forgiveness because you cannot impose forgiveness on people. You have to arrive to it through the process of a dialogue. So we included those 3 components in working with teachers who are willing to work in this area. And the most difficult one was the critical thinking. So because many of the teachers we work with in conflict area are trained not to critically think, are trained to brainwash. Like many of our teachers here. Or not to essentialize outside. We also have teachers here who do not necessarily encourage critical thinking.
I think the gentleman in the back. Yes.
Yeah, hey, I'm Frank. Thank you very much, both of you, for speaking. It's an honor. I just like a quick background. Like last year, during my sophomore year, during the spring semester, I conducted a discourse analysis research project, 25 pages long, specifically counter-violence extremism. It was mostly on, I had to code and identify specific media perceptions and official discourse perceptions towards suicide terrorists and how that relates to the ongoing, I guess you can say, Islamophobia and kind of perceptions towards Muslims and how they kind of morph them together and stuff like that. It was a big project. I actually presented here in Neighbors and Family for the SIS Research Symposium. So it was a good time. I learned a lot. I have one question as well, though. So what I identified through my research was that quantitative studies tend to be a big problem. Because quantitative studies tend to be very binary by nature, and you categorize suicide terrorists specifically by either religious purposes, political, secular purposes, sometimes market attraction. Some terrorist groups sometimes want to be more marketable, so they commit more suicide bombings. There's a lot of categorizations that kind of say that it's more subjective by nature. It's more suicide terrorism is more of a term, an empty signifier that can be different meanings to be attached to the term. Different meanings, different identities, and all this kind of morphs into a dynamic aspect of everything, right? But ultimately, also, I called for further study or further religious studies, in counter-violence extremism, which is interesting that you guys talking about too. But fundamentally, I think a lot of people, I think it's also very dangerous, or not dangerous, but also not correct to say that the Bible and the Quran are exactly the same thing either. I think that we're called, all of us, we're all called to love each other, to work together with one another, but at the same time, the Bible and the Quran are fundamentally different. And I think people have to actually analyze for themselves, read through it themselves, and they will identify the differences that stem out of it. But my question specifically, because I'm not that well versed in the Quran as well, but is Allah considered love anywhere in the Quran? And that's just my question. Yeah. Thank you.
I think I can take the beginning of it. You take the end. Allah mahabba. Allah mahabba. This is one of the favorite terms. Mahabba is love. So, and if you grew up with the native Arabic and also prayer in general, God is associated with love. Read Rumi, read Ibn Arabi, read these writers or Muslim philosophers and Sufi particularly teachers from the 11th and 10th century who established their entire paradigm of Islamic discourse theology out of love, out of the, even they talk about is to lose your person, yourself, into the love of God. That's the highest level of faith, where you transcend your human existence because you experience portion of God's love. So that's not. I mean, it's there. There's no need to go further in explaining it. I think you can find it with a simple Google. I think that the issue, I would like to respond to the issue of the sameness of the Quran and the Bible. They're not the same, and no two holy books are the same, and that's the beauty of it. And I don't think we should promote in any interfaith interaction any sense of sameness. We should seek commonalities, but we should seek them a little, and we should seek more to build on them, on the commonality. We should seek the differences because we are fearful usually from these differences. And we should honor and identify those differences. We should not be afraid from them. And anyone who tells you that the Quran or that Muslim, Christian, Judaism are the same, they're not necessarily being honest with you about the nature of the work that should be done in interfaith dialogue. I think commonalities are important, but they are not the end of the story. They're just the beginning. The story is really about the differences and how to respect them and make the space for them.
Well, I don't know what to add to this, but except what our experience and my understanding has been. I am recently reading a wonderful book, which is Contemporary Quran, written alongside the verses from Bible, New Testament, Old Testament, and there are similarities, tremendous amount of similarities, and there are differences, but those are identified, and similarities are identified. Regardless of all this, my layperson understanding of all the books, all the messages, all the prophets, and creation of this universe is care of human being. If any faith doesn't teach that, I don't know what the purpose is. In the differences, there is care for each other. In all the commonalities, there is care for one another. That is my lesson. We participate in interfaith activities as family. We go to worship with our Christian friends, with our Jewish friends. They come to our home. They go with us, and we see the differences. We enjoy those differences, yet we see so much commonalities, so much being helpful to one another, being caring towards one another. So personally for us, the differences are wonderful, to be cherished, to be enjoyed, and commonality brings us even closer. Therefore, purpose of faith in our lives have been caring for each other. And what I understand from other faiths, I get the same message that faiths were created, the guidance was given to us to be caring towards one another. Thank you.
Joe?
I think it'd be very, very good for this community for you to tell us the story.
I'm not sure everyone can hear you, Joe. Stand
or
project, yeah.
If you could tell us the story that we shared during our brunch at the Cosmos Club, of how you came to have the Constitution in your pocket when you were invited. It's a beautiful story. It'd be a great thing to read with this community.
Well, I stand sit embarrassed in front of these scholars, and they have better things to teach all of us. Then,
Law degree.
well,
Yes.
I would honor your request. Lots of people have asked about how this all came into being, that we were invited to stand in DNC and speak. In December of last year, a candidate had said, I'm going to ban all Muslims, we are going to throw away all Hispanic Americans, and judges are bad and others are bad and all. So a newspaper writer called me, James King from New York, and said he's writing an article, what are my thoughts, what are my comments? I shared with him. He published that article. That article was picked up by the Democratic National Committee's Convention Committee, and they prepared a tribute to Captain Kahn, and that tribute is available if folks want to watch it, and it was that tribute that was presented at DNC. And we were asked that if other Gold Star families are coming, if you would come, but your turn will be on Thursday night. You will have a very tight schedule and only minute and a half, whatever you want to say, so come prepared. So we talked among ourselves whether we should even go there because of the backlash and the political consequences of that participation. We had visited, since that announcement of Republican candidate of banning Muslims and throwing away all Hispanics, we would go to visit our friends, and their small children, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, even some college kids would come to us and ask me, you're an attorney, tell us, is this true? Can this happen? Can I finish my high school? Can I finish my college, my elementary school? Would my parents be thrown away from here? Where would I live? What would I do? And their parents would tell us that these kids don't eat properly. They don't do their homework. They have lost interest in their studies. Please assure them that this is not true, which we did at our part, but once a child's heart is scared, it takes a whole lot for it to heal and to cure. So we decided intentionally that we will appear and we will say what was on our mind. That was the motivating factor, and regardless of us being warned by our other children that do not do this, this will come with a price, we decided, Ravella and I, that we will appear and we will say what we wanted to say and what we said. The actual word of the speech were that, have you read the Constitution of the United States? If you would read, you will look for the word liberty and equal protection of law, because that is where lies the answer to lots of political rhetoric that we have heard this election year, in equal protection. So we were getting ready in Philadelphia and going to the convention. They had told us, make sure that you come early and you don't bring anything that can cause difficulty at the security check, and it will take a really long time for you to go through the security process if you have metals and things. So I was checking as we were leaving the hotel, get into the cab to go to the convention. I felt copy of, because I normally keep copy of Constitution in my pocket, I felt it is in my pocket. And I asked my wife that I have this Constitution, can I pull it out at this stage? She said, no, you shouldn't do this. You should ask them, take their permission if you're going to do that, because that is not part of the speech, and it will be beyond the protocol of appearing at such a dignified event. But make sure if they give you permission, you pull it out correctly, not upside down. So we are traveling in the car, and she's sitting next to me, and I'm practicing pulling it out, and practicing. So we got to the convention center went through the security and got to the hall where the speakers are waiting in line. It's a big line. General John Allen is behind us. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is ahead of us because he introduced the video of a tribute to Captain Humayun Khan. And we are sitting in the middle, and after all the powder and makeup, they do this for everybody. So if you wind up speaking, they will definitely put some makeup on you. And now we are ready to go to the green room where they have floodlights. The reason they told us that this has to be done this way so that you're not then blinded once you get on the stage. So this is a good practice. So please stand on the podium. And I am asking Ghazala, would you like to say something? At least say, thank you for inviting us and paying tribute to our son. Thank you, and my husband will speak. Don't say much, but at least say that much. She's saying that if I spoke, if I open my mouth, I'll either sob or I will fall. Therefore, don't ask me to speak anything. I will just stand there. I'll hold the podium, and that's what she's doing in the photo if you see. I'm asking her now, should I ask their permission now? And they say yes. So I talked to the producer, and he's standing about 10 feet away, and senior producer of this entire program. So I show him that I have this constitution in my pocket. Can I produce it like this when I ask, have you read the Constitution? And he moved from there, he came straight, just so close to me, and his eyes were welled. He said, are you sure, Mr. Khan, you want to do this? And I said, yes. He said, go ahead and do that. He fully, I could tell from his telling me, go ahead and do that, he fully realized the impact of it will have on audience because of his experience and all that. So the rest is history, so that's how it all came about. But behind all this struggle, what I meant to say, and same thing as a footnote to the question that was asked about God being love, and it was out of care for others. We had no need to be prominent, to stand there, lose our privacy, take the risk and all that. It was, believe me, for the care of those little kids, little children that were scared. Since then, I've just a couple of days ago, I was in DC before going to Michigan. Hispanic women on the street grabbed Mr. Khan. I said, yes. I looked back. Thank you. I said, thank you very much. And I wanted to move. She said, I have to tell you something. I said, I have a 7-year-old son. He watches your speech. I said, thank you. I again said, thank you. And I said, no. He took that speech to his class. He was being bullied. And he asked them to watch that speech. Teacher insisted that the whole class watches it. So he comes back home happy. There are so many stories. I can continue to tell you how many letters we have received from students, from the small children, telling us this is the impact it has had. The reason is that all of this effort, haphazardness, this speaking English with accent and not being able to convey thoughts completely properly, but behind all this was care for others. It was done with that intent, and that intent continues to come through. People are realizing that that was the purpose that this was said, this was done. So that is what we have learned. That's how, to us, our Creator, our God had been the God of our neighbors. Our neighbors have been so loving that watch for us. If there is unwanted car passing by, they would stop it and they would check and they would look after us and all. So much love and care is being extended to us. We are so grateful, all just as a community. So I hope I told this story.